Jaquan Carlos. Welcome to the Cuse.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And Syracuse Basketball gets a four-star true point guard in the transfer portal. He's from Hofstra, Jaquan Carlos. Welcome to the Cuse. Who is he? What does he bring? What does the guard rotation now look like? And could there be more guards on the way? Dakota Leffew. That's all I'm going to say. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, if you are a new viewer, first of all, welcome. I love new listeners, new viewers, and I know for these episodes, I tend to get new listeners and viewers. So for my returning viewers, some of this information might be a little bit repetitive, but who is Jaquan Carlos and what does he bring to Syracuse? So first off, I didn't even know that Jaquan Carlos had visited. Didn't know. If you recall, when I was giving transfer portal updates, I would bring up his name and I would say, yeah, this seems like a good pickup. And I know Syracuse has reached out to him, but there was nothing online that I could tell or that I could see that said he had visited or he was in the area or anything like that. So it's not that this came out of nowhere or that this was some sort of surprise, but hey, I was happy to see the news that Jaquan Carlos is now a member of Syracuse. So, Jaquan Carlos is a 6-foot senior from Hofstra. He averaged 10 points and 6 assists per game last season. That led his conference, and he is a 2-time all-conference defender. He can pass, and he can defend. Pretty good, right? I'll take that combination. And he also has a little bit of a shot to him. 34% from 3 last year, which is not, otherworldly. It's not Kobe Bryant 50%. But Jaquan Carlos, 34% from the 3-point line. I know that it's a tougher conference, the ACC, but the 3-point line, it doesn't move, right? It's the same 3-point line. So even if it goes down a hair, he's a respectable 3-point shooter. Now, in terms of where he ranks in the transfer portal, I mentioned that he is a 4-star recruit. There is a tiny bit of discrepancy in his ranking. 24/7 Sports is highest on him. They have him at 169 overall. On3 has him at 233 overall, so they're lower on Carlos, but still a 4-star no matter where you look. This is a solid addition. What does he bring? He brings experience. Syracuse last year had one player in its rotation that was listed as an upperclassman. Can you guess who that player was? I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, well, if you guessed Benny Williams, you would be correct. Benny Williams was the lone player on the Syracuse roster last year that was listed as a junior or above. And it is Benny Williams. Put that in perspective for a second here. This was a team mostly made of young kids. Now you bring in a seasoned veteran like Jaquan Carlos, adding experience. And if you look at the roster right now for this team that they have assembled, JJ Starling, upperclassman. Chris Bell, upperclassman. Obviously, Jaquan Carlos, an upperclassman. Eddie Lampkin, an upperclassman. Jair Davis. Naheem McLeod. McLeod was kind of a gray area. He was listed as a sophomore, even though I believe it was like his 4th year in college. He was listed as a sophomore last year. Kyler Cuffe and Chance Westry. We'll see how Syracuse classifies them for next season. I'd imagine they're going to be juniors on that. But regardless, that's a lot of juniors and above on this roster now. And Carlos only adds that. He only adds to it. They needed experience. They've gotten experience. They also get a true floor general in Jaquan Carlos. Syracuse didn't have it last year with Judah Mintz. I love Judah Mintz, but he was not a true point guard, so to speak. This isn't a knock on him, just more of a combo. Jaquan Carlos, true point guard. Joe Girard wasn't a true point guard. Kadari Richmond wasn't a true point guard, just going back. The last one that really was a true point guard was Tyler Ennis. Now, Carlos is not as good as Tyler Ennis. I'm not saying that, but that's just kind of the perspective here. And I was doing some research, and Jaquan Carlos had a 19 assists game last year. It was on February 17th, 2024, against Northeastern, where he had 19 assists in one game. He's not going to average 19 assists. He's probably not going to average more than 6 in the ACC next year. But that is just some perspective for you on what he brings as a floor general. This is a great distributor who has a low turnover rate, who can shoot the ball a little bit as well. 34% from 3, 89% free throw shooter last season. Free throws matter, of course. And finally, defense. Defense. Two-time all-conference defender. And I get it. He played at Hofstra. He played in the CAA. But being a two-time all-conference defender is not nothing. I'm not saying he's going to come into next season and be the defensive player of the year in the ACC. I'm not going to overreact to it. I'm not overreacting to this addition. I'm just telling you what he brings as a player. He is a very, very good defender and something that Syracuse kind of needed. When you look at their roster, yeah, they're bringing in guys who can score, but Eddie Lampkin, he was another transfer, not known for his defense. Jair Davis, good scorer, can create his own shot, but if you're looking at him versus Malik Brown is a far better defender than Jair Davis. Chris Bell, I've talked about him, that he is not the greatest defender in the world. JJ Starling is hit or miss on the defensive end. They needed someone. They needed someone who can really play defense, and Jaquan Carlos can do just that. So in summary, here's what Jaquan Carlos brings. He brings experience. He is a true floor general. He can bring a little bit of shooting to this team, and he can defend on the perimeter. Jaquan Carlos is a solid addition to the transfer portal class. Not elite by any means, but a very solid pickup. Now, what could his role be next season, and how is the guard rotation now looking for Syracuse basketball? Guys, I need you all to listen up for this huge announcement. I have been tracking the leaderboards every day, keeping my eye on the scores, putting all my heart into it, and I'm super pumped to announce I am finally on top. That's right, obviously, I'm talking about the hit mobile game Monopoly Go. You've probably heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great mobile twist on classic Monopoly. You can play anywhere, anytime. You explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the moon, all while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties just like classic Monopoly. You can charge your friends rent on your iconic properties, or go after their Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking wrecking balls to their landmarks. But my favorite part is the leaderboards, where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who's gone bankrupt. So go get yourself on the charts. Download Monopoly Go, now free in the App Store and Google Play. I was once trying to buy a last-minute ticket for a New York Mets game last year, and it was frustrating. I couldn't see the view from my seat, and the deals weren't that good at all. That's why I now use Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, and one game that I'm thinking about attending is Mets-Marlins down in Miami on May 19th. I can get in for as little as $5. I just went to the Gametime app, searched up Mets tickets, and the deal popped up right away. You can do the same with any team of your choosing, including the hometown Syracuse Mets. That's right. It was so easy to find. Syracuse is at home on Thursday, and you can get in for $3. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the streaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and Jaquan Carlos, a 6-foot point guard from Hofstra, 4 stars overall, has transferred to Syracuse. He brings experience. He's a floor general. He plays good defense, and he's got a little bit of a shot and athleticism to him as well. And now it's time to talk a little bit about the guard rotation heading into next season. And I'm going to preface this by saying, as of this recording, because coming up, we'll talk about Dakota Leffew. But for now, this is how the guard rotation looks. Jaquan Carlos and JJ Starling, I believe, will be, as of now, the starting backcourt for Syracuse come their first game of the season. Now, I can see Carlos playing about 25 minutes a night. I don't think he is an elite player by any means, but if you look at what this team needs, they need someone who can distribute the ball because they got firepower, right? I mentioned how JJ Starling, he's locked into his role, by the way. JJ Starling is probably going to play 30-plus minutes a night next season. You need someone who can get the ball to them. Carlos can do just that. You got JJ Starling. He can shoot. He can create his own shot, but hey, Carlos can feed him the ball. You got Eddie Lampkin down low with those post moves. Hey, Carlos can give him that rock. Chris Bell, we know he's a sharpshooter. We just need someone to, you get the idea. And of course, the number 6 overall player in the ESPN 100 list in Donnie Freeman, who I have said on, this morning's podcast, which is that his expectations should be through the roof considering the previous track record of number 6 overall recruits coming in to college in their first season. But anyways, the starting backcourt next year, as of now, will be Jaquan Carlos playing about 25 minutes a night and JJ Starling. I think that is about an average starting backcourt in the ACC. I think that's about average. Of course, they can add to it. And then next up, you have the 3 other players who I think would come off the bench. Chance Westry, probably 20-plus minutes a night if he's healthy. And what this Jaquan Carlos pickup does is provide just a little bit more insurance on Westry, not having to rely on him to be a full-time starter by any means next year. I've talked about how he's a wild card on this podcast. We don't know. He was a high recruit. He's only played 11 games, though, in his college career. So you don't want to go into the season next year relying on Westry to play a big role. And with Carlos coming in, his role just gets a little bit, you don't have to depend on him as much anymore. That's the point, right? But, as of now, 20-plus minutes a night probably for Westry. Elijah Moore, he's a 4-star freshman coming in. He could carve out a role maybe, but low-end 4-star recruits typically don't have one in their first year. I would say this. He's known as a sharpshooter, and if he's hitting his shot, you have to play him. You have to play him if he's hitting his shot, right? I don't know how much, maybe 5 to 10 minutes a night. Maybe he would carve out a bigger role if he's hitting his shot more, but he projects to be the number 4 guard right now in the rotation. So far we got Jaquan Carlos and JJ Starling as the starters, Chance Westry, Elijah Moore as the backups, and then there's Kyle Cuffe. I got a minimal role for Kyle Cuffe. Minimal. Last season, towards the end, he had to maybe play a little bit more. I just don't see Kyle Cuffe doing much next season because you have 4 guards, I believe, that are better than him, and there might be another one on the way. And if you look at what Kyle Cuffe can do well, which is, he's a little bit of a pit bull. He can play good defense. Well, so can Jaquan Carlos. Jaquan Carlos is a defender. We'll see how Chance Westry is, but I imagine his defense will probably be pretty good as well. Elijah Moore can shoot. What does Kyle Cuffe do, or what does he bring that the other 4 guards don't bring? So I don't think Kyle Cuffe next year is going to have much of an impact on the team. I think right now he's the 4th guard or the 5th guard in the rotation. Could be the 6th if this other guy comes on the way. But in conclusion, the guard rotation, how it looks, I see Jaquan Carlos and JJ Starling as the starters, Chance Westry and Elijah Moore as the primary backups. You can mix and match those 4, honestly. You don't have necessarily that you don't have another point guard there, but mix and match those 4. And then Kyle Cuffe is the 5th guy who, minimal role. That's how I see it. Maybe he plays a couple minutes a night. Maybe he plays every few games. Perhaps he plays in situations where Syracuse is blowing a team out, or, we don't want this to happen, are getting blown out. That's how I see the guard rotation now. Is Syracuse done in the transfer portal? I don't think so. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. And hey, Syracuse football fans, I know there's a lot of optimism, so you can go on FanDuel right now and put your money where your mouth is. Syracuse to win the ACC at plus 4,500. If you are one of those people that has Syracuse winning 10 games next year or more, this is a bet that I would say, hey, why not take a stab at it if you think that Syracuse is going to win 10 plus games? So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Jaquan Carlos, a 4-star transfer point guard from Hofstra, has recently committed to Syracuse for next season. What does he bring? Well, he brings experience. He's a good defender. He can shoot a little bit, and he's a true floor general. Once had 19 assists in a game. That was this past season. We discussed the guard rotation for next year and how right now Jaquan Carlos is projected to start at point guard. JJ Starling would be the other guard in the starting. And then you have Chance Westry, Elijah Moore as the primary backups, with Kyle Cuffe having a minimal role. And now what's next? What is next? I think we've all seen it right now. I've been pretty active on Twitter today, or whenever you're watching this on Wednesday. Dakota Leffew. I have been saying for a while, why not get both? Why not get both Dakota Leffew and Jaquan Carlos? Why? What's stopping them? Why? One's too good to come off the bench? Really? Well, Dakota Leffew has picked up a crystal ball on 24/7 Sports from Mike McAllister. Now, Dakota Leffew, he visited Syracuse, he visited Villanova, he visited South Carolina, he also visited Georgia, and I believe he also visited Xavier, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. He averaged 17 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists last year at Mount St. Mary's. Obviously, the Orange recently hired his former head coach, Dan Engelstad, as their assistant coach. That's the connection right there. All conference player, more of a combo guard, 37% from three last year. Now, if Dakota Leffew commits, I would probably give you a lot more information on him. I have given a lot of information on this podcast about Dakota Leffew. We've talked about him a lot because Syracuse has been in the rumor mill for him for a while. So I'm going to save a little bit of it. What I will tell you is there is a crystal ball for Dakota Leffew to commit to Syracuse. He would add to the guard rotation with Jaquan Carlos, with JJ Starling, with Chance Westry, Elijah Moore, and Kyler Cuffe. Syracuse could be a very, very deep team next year. And not to spoil too much if he were to commit, I see people saying, well, who do you start? What happens, right? It's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have if Dakota Leffew were to commit to Syracuse, because you would have tons of options. You can go small. You can go big. You can play Dakota Leffew as the starting point guard. You can have him coming off the bench because he's not a true point guard like Jaquan Carlos. They are different players. You have JJ Starling locked in. You have multiple shooters on the floor. Last year, this was a team that I would say when Benny Williams went down, or when Benny Williams was kicked off and Naheem McLeod went down with injury, they had 5 players on their roster who could legitimately play. They had 5. They had Judah Mintz, JJ Starling, Chris Bell, Malik Brown, and Quadir Copeland. It was only those 5. I don't want to hear about anyone else because there was just no depth on this team last year. If this guy were to commit, Dakota Leffew, massive depth all across the lineup. Every single position would be deep. At least 3 from every position. Actually, not center, 2. So 2 from the center position, 3 from everywhere else. It is significant. I would say it's super important that Syracuse lands Dakota Leffew. They already have, right now, a top 10 incoming class in terms of combining what they've done in the transfer portal and what they have done in freshman recruiting. They already have a top 10 class in the country. Don't believe me? Go look it up. They're top 10. Now, Jaquan Carlos is only going to add to that. I haven't checked recently what it is exactly, but I know it's still in the top 10. Dakota Leffew might push them into the top 5. All I'm saying is we should hope it happens. Now, I will acknowledge it's going to be maybe a little bit chaotic here on this channel over these next few days. So I'm going to give you a rundown of what to expect going forward. Now, if Dakota Leffew were to commit, if he commits, hopefully today, that episode will drop on Thursday. I don't have a time for you yet of when I'm going to drop it, but it will be coming on Thursday if Dakota Leffew were to commit to Syracuse. If he does not commit to Syracuse within the next day, I would say, then this episode that you're watching about Jaquan Carlos, guard rotation, etc., this one will serve as the Thursday podcast. Okay? Because this is already the 4th podcast of the week. This will just go for Thursday. Coming on Friday, it's locked in. CF Budge will be coming on the podcast. He will be discussing his takes about Kyle McCord and Fran Brown and how he had them ranked so low in the ACC. So stay tuned for that. That will happen on Friday. Normally episodes come out at 9 a.m. If for whatever reason something happens, I might move around that time. But it will happen on Friday, regardless of Dakota Leffew. And of course, there's Poll Friday on Friday. Normally it's at 6 o'clock, but again, we don't know. I am at the mercy of this news that's going on right now. I might push it back a little bit depending on what happens. But as of now, I have it at 6 o'clock on Friday, the usual for Poll Friday. I'll repeat myself one more time for you guys. On Thursday, if Dakota Leffew commits, we'll have a Dakota Leffew podcast. If Dakota Leffew does not commit to Syracuse, this episode will be the Thursday episode. On Friday, CF Budge will be joining the podcast to discuss Kyle McCord and Fran Brown. And on Friday as well, there's Poll Friday, as of now scheduled for 6 o'clock. We'll see if I push that back or not, depending on what happens. So that is it for today's episode. Once again, Jaquan Carlos, a member of Syracuse officially. It's a good pickup for them. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know exactly when I'm dropping the next podcast. And Dakota Leffew, you're next.